The human desire to explore our world leads to discovery, uncovering ways to help each other live healthier lives, creating innovations that turn science fiction into reality. And now we're facing the most complex, pressing challenges yet. How will we create a more sustainable world? Ensure safety is for the many, not just the few. Make security part of everyday life. Our answer to these questions? It starts with safety science. We bring the ingenuity needed to engineer a safer world in which every individual can thrive. Researching emergent risks and sharing that knowledge, helping forge partnerships and move toward action, and developing the solutions businesses need to innovate with confidence. Our safety science is your advantage. You'll find our people partnering with leading organizations to create products we can trust, supply chains we can rely on, technologies that make automation the new normal. Safety science expands all our horizons. We are 3 distinct organizations. UL Research Institutes, UL Standards and Engagement, UL Solutions. United by one mission, working for a safer world. When we act together, we can solve any problem. Let's imagine a safer, more secure, more sustainable world and make it possible.
For 135 years, the Financial Times has used a couple of F words. Without fear and without favor is the phrase that set our agenda from the day we launched. We knew it was a bold claim, and no one expected fearless to be easy. Our journalists have investigated powerful people, knowing that they get angry, working offline to avoid being hacked while they ignored intimidation and even blackmail attempts. And when you ruffle big feathers, they set their big lawyers onto you. But the truth is always the most powerful case for the defense. Our editors know that reporting without favor is non-negotiable, even in their own friendships. Like when we raised doubts about a global ad boss and staunchly opposed a UK chancellor. We refused to let go of the truth, so our journalists refused to be bullied, as one reporter proved when she exposed sleaze in the very heart of the city. Because we've always known that taking on the highest levels of the establishment would demand courage and determination, and that it always will. So as we move into the future, we'll make sure that we never stray from the motto that the FT reports without fear and without favor.
How the Ukrainian people have responded has at least awakened the world in a way that indicates how one person, a handful of people, a group of people can move the conscience of the world.
And I am always so thrilled when we have young people that are stepping forward and saying, I really want to engage. I want to be part of my community and find solutions for my community, for my state, for my nation. I love that.
I think the biggest opportunity that my generation has is actually here right now. My generation is already doing everything to address the climate crisis. We've been organizing and mobilizing strikes, climate education, community reach outs, and running different projects in our communities for years.
Everyone in this room has obligations to one another. Ivo and I have them to one another. You all have them, and we all have them to this country, the government, to authority, and to this country. But it's almost a distribution or a decentralization of effort. Teachers have certain obligations, journalists do, business leaders do, parents do, religious authority, congregational leaders do. It takes the cumulative effort of all these individuals in our society to get us to where we want to go.
Distinguished guests, please welcome to the stage CEO of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, Ivo Daalder.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to the 2023 Pritzker Forum on Global Cities, hosted by the Chicago Council on Global Affairs in partnership with the Financial Times. We began hosting this conference almost a decade ago in 2015 to explore the influential role cities play in addressing critical global challenges. In the past decade has been an urban one. Not only has the world rapidly urbanized, but cities, mayors, and urban leaders have had an increasingly important impact on international affairs and on global policy. From climate change to the pandemic, to migration, cities have become part of not only living with the problems, but addressing many of the solutions. They have become actors on the global stage. Today, cities are widely recognized as essential partners in addressing these problems, partners of national governments, international organizations, philanthropy, and the private sector. Cities have always been the nerve center of society, and never more so than in today's modern world. They're home today to the largest corporations, our most influential media outlets, to government institutions, and to the majority of the world's population. They are places of spontaneous interactions, incubators of new ideas and innovation, and sites for cultural exploration. They are vibrant, dynamic, diverse, and ever-changing. When artificial intelligence and quantum computing made headlines earlier this year, the conversation mostly took place at the national and the global level. So the connection to cities may not be immediately obvious. But just as we've seen in the past, when global forces come to the forefront, it's cities who will bear the brunt of the impact, for better or worse. Given the magnitude of change presented by technological shifts, cities are using the same models of coalitions, of urban diplomacy, and of policy exchange to address the issues of development, digital infrastructure, and data security. On the hot-button issue of AI itself, national governments have already weighed in, with the United States government issuing a new executive order on AI that directs federal agencies to deploy AI and guard against possible biases, while creating chief AI officers, among other requirements. In Europe, there's also the European Union's AI Act, widely touted as the world's first comprehensive AI law. And now we find ourselves asking how cities and urban leaders will respond to the rapid adoption of these new technologies that are reshaping our world and that could upend nearly every aspect of urban life as we know it. The promises and stakes of this moment could not be higher. And over the next few days, we'll ask the hard questions and have had hard conversations. Questions like, how are tech leaders considering the ways in which cities may leverage these new tools for the benefit of all of their residents? Is there truth to the common narrative that AI will lead to job losses for workers across all sectors? Or will it unleash a wave of productivity and prosperity? How can AI best be used to equitably ensure that cities are safe while holding government agencies accountable? And how can cities share knowledge and best practices across municipal boundaries and national borders to broaden the scope of AI's applicability and avoid its potential pitfalls? This week, we've gathered the greatest minds from the academy, from the business community, from government, and the nonprofit world to examine each of these questions and build the foundations for a multi-sector collaborations that will allow us to leverage AI's true potential for the good of society and our planet. That is why convenings like these are so important. Where else do stakeholders from every sector in society leave their silos behind to converge and find actionable solutions to our most global challenges. Thank you for being here today, taking the time out of your very busy lives to join us in asking and, importantly, starting to answer these critical questions. I also want to thank our sponsors, Clayco and Kirkland & Ellis, and our lead sponsors, Underwriters Laboratory, the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, and of course, the Pritzker Family Foundation. And now it's indeed my great pleasure to introduce someone who has helped make this forum possible for the past 5 years, Margot Pritzker of the Pritzker Family Foundation. Margot is a longtime philanthropist and an advocate of local, national, and global causes, including food sovereignty and women's empowerment. In addition to sitting on the board of the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, Margot Pritzker is chair of the Aspen Institute's Board of Trustees. Without her generous support and that of her family, we would not be able to convene here today. So please welcome to the stage, Margot Pritzker.
Good evening. Thank you, Ivo, for that wonderful welcome. And thank you all for joining us tonight for the opening program of the 2023 Pritzker Forum on Global Cities. It's wonderful to be gathering everyone back in person in Chicago, even though I can't see even one of you out there. Since 2019, the Pritzker Foundation has been proud to support the Pritzker Forum on Global Cities as one of the premier international gatherings for global leaders to explore the influential role cities play in addressing global challenges and to lay the groundwork for critical multi-sector collaborations. The healthy vitality of global cities is very important to us as a family and was a critical component when we established the Pritzker Prize for Architecture in 1979 to honor a living architect and their significant contribution to humanity and the built environment. Their contribution to the vibrancy of cities is something that affects all of us every day. Furthering our commitment to ensuring Chicago maintains its place in the global order of great cities is core to our engagement with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, but also in our partnership with the University of Chicago for the establishment of UChicago Urban Labs. These 5 labs are dedicated to studying issues in cities related to crime, education, health, energy and the environment, and of course, economic opportunity. And their goal is the advancing of innovative, partnership-based approach to designing, testing, promising policies and programs that generate large-scale positive social change. Given the challenge that all cities face, from climate change to migration to continued pandemic recovery, cross-sector collaborations like the Urban Labs are critical to finding solutions, as well as gatherings such as this that bring the best and brightest minds together to not only share best practices, but to make lasting connections that are vital to our continued progress. Artificial intelligence is, of course, one of these challenges and is poised to change the way we all work and live and the very ways we experience our cities in many positive ways, but challenges there most certainly will be. I'm delighted the Forum has chosen to tackle such a demanding topic this year for its in-person return to critical conversations and connections. As everyone in this room knows, without tackling the hard questions, we will not find the hard and right answers for our cities. I very much hope you all enjoy these next 3 days of dialogue and networking. Thank you. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome the 57th Mayor of Chicago, Mayor Brenda Johnson, to the stage.
Thank you so much, Margot, for that introduction, and thank you for the comfort as well as the insight that you bring and provide to the public space. And thank you all for being here, and particularly those who have traveled from every corner of the globe for the 2023 Pritzker Forum on Global Cities. It is my honor to welcome you to the greatest city in the world, though I know I might have a little bit of a bias. But on behalf of the city of Chicago, we are truly honored to host the city for this forum, and where we will map out a brighter future for our global communities. You know, I have been mayor of Chicago for about 6 months now, and so far, it's been a true honor of a lifetime to lead the world's greatest city in a time of tough challenges, but yet great opportunities. As Ivo mentioned earlier, cities have always been on the front lines of big issues that face the global community. From climate change to public safety and to social and economic inequality, these are the conversations that begin with cities. And even as U.S. immigration, which is typically a national conversation, is increasingly happening on a local level these days, it's proof that cities are the real place where real opportunities can forge us towards a better and a more dynamic society. And conversations that affect the daily lives of our residents, it has to happen at the city level. And after all, local leaders are closest to the ground where service is most impacted and felt. And we know that the needs of our residents are tremendous, but we also know our residents because we are from the same neighborhoods. And we know that their dreams live through the hopes and aspirations of conversations like these next 3 days. And that is why city leaders, along with the brightest minds from around the globe, are gathering through this forum to discuss groundbreaking new technologies like artificial intelligence and quantum computing. And we must ensure that these technologies shape brighter futures for our cities. But we also have to make sure that there is a benefit that is felt by people of all walks of life. I believe Chicago is the ideal city to host these discussions. We are the crossroads of the Americas, a hub for innovation, technology, and development. Chicago is a convergence of people and ideas and cultures from all over the world. And while we are not the most well-known tech city, we do a bit of everything here in Chicago. In fact, Chicago has the most diversified economy in the U.S., with no sector making up more than 15% of the total economic output. Our strengths range from finance to manufacturing, agriculture, logistics, telecommunications, and of course the list goes on. And thanks to the efforts of the tech industry advocates like P33, leading academic institutions like the University of Chicago and the University of Illinois, and national labs such as Aragon and the Fermi Lab, Chicago is positioned to lead the emerging field of quantum computing. And just last month, the Biden-Harris administration named Chicago as the official U.S. tech hub for quantum technology. And here in Chicago, we are harnessing the power of new technologies to shape a brighter future for our residents. One with abundant job opportunities and vibrancy throughout all of our communities to build a better, stronger, and a much safer Chicago. And I hope that the backdrop of this city will inspire this forum. AI and quantum science both have the potential to transform our cities by advancing our technological capabilities and improving the way that we serve our residents. Additionally, this technology will provide residents with opportunities to participate in and lead the economy for the future. These fast-growing technologies have the potential to uplift communities through inclusive job creation and new infrastructure. And for example, just last year, the quantum computing company known as AeroQ moved its headquarters to Chicago's Humboldt Park neighborhood, a diverse community on the west side of Chicago. There's usually always one other West Sider in here that says West Side. By choosing Humboldt Park, AeroQ is not only contributing to Chicago's growing quantum ecosystem, but it is being used to revitalize communities that desperately need investment, to bring real economic prosperity and revitalization to neighborhoods that have been left out of the economic opportunities for a generation now. It is progress like this that we should be all working towards. And as mayor, I will collaborate to work towards a more inclusive and innovative economy in my city to ensure that our prosperity is shared by all residents. To ensure that prosperity is shared by all residents, and particularly those who have been historically underserved. And for too long, technology has been moving at a pace that unfortunately grows inequality. But it doesn't have to be that way. It is our obligation as mayors, city administrators, business leaders, academic chairs, as well as philanthropists to come together and collaborate to build a future where everyone can take part in the 21st century economy. Our challenges are great, certainly they are. And there are many difficult conversations for us to navigate. But I'm confident that we can tackle any challenge head on by working together. As city leaders, this is a pivotal moment for us to seize. This is an opportunity for us to rethink what it means to be global cities, to give a real voice to our residents on global issues that matter, and to work with others worldwide to solve the problems. Thank you all for being here. I really mean that. And thank you all for dedicating your life to service and opportunity for those who desperately need us to figure it out. And thank you for spending so much money in my city so that I can invest in the very neighborhoods that technology can ultimately transform. And as mayor of the city of Chicago, I welcome you all to our city and hope that this global forum marks an inflection point for all of our cities. So let's go forth together to build a brighter future together. Thank you. May God bless you. Thank you for your work, and congratulations in advance. Good night, you all.
And now, a message from our co-host, U.S. editor of the Financial Times, Peter Spiegel.
I'm Peter Spiegel, the U.S. managing editor of the Financial Times, and I'd like to start with a word of regret. I'm currently in Tokyo, which, like Chicago, is one of the world's great international cities, so I can't be with you for the first in-person Pritzker Forum since the pandemic, which is a shame, because what the Pritzker Forum has always highlighted for me in the 9 years that the FT has co-sponsored this event is the importance of cities as gathering places for talent and ideas, places where people from diverse backgrounds and areas of expertise can serendipitously bump into each other and create a spark that leads to something new. So I'm extremely glad everyone is back in Chicago instead of sitting in front of a computer live stream, but my apologies for not being there myself to share in the bumping and the sparking. There are, however, lots of members of the FT team there with you this week because we are great believers in what this forum represents. Global cities have had a difficult run in recent years. A pandemic called into question their very existence. High-profile cases of police brutality sparked a racial reckoning in Minneapolis, Louisville, and Kenosha. Climate change and extreme weather have caused brownouts in Houston, Texas, wildfires in Athens, Greece, and massive flooding in Darden, Libya. And brutal attacks have been unleashed on civilians in cities from Ukraine to the Middle East. But through it all, the Pritzker Forum has stood out as a place where champions of our global cities can come together to debate these crises, call out abuses, and contribute to solutions to the challenges they present. This year is no different. We are still in the early days when it comes to understanding the impact artificial intelligence will have on our societies, our economies, and our geopolitical order. Will AI make our lives easier and our cities more livable? Or will it cause the kinds of social and economic dislocation that could pull us apart? There are futurists on both sides of the debate. But for those of us who care about the fate of our great global cities, the imperative is to prepare so that we are well placed to take advantage of the promise that AI presents in productivity and problem solving, while at the same time make sure we gird ourselves for what will inevitably be a reordering of our societal and economic well-being. If anywhere there this week can solve all our problems that AI presents, please let me know. I'm in the market. But it's worth remembering that history shows how our major cities can be the perfect petri dishes for the practical and beneficial applications of new technologies. Penicillin and the internal combustion engine helped turn our cities from disease-ridden, foul-smelling cesspools into places that are, well, somewhat less foul-smelling and disease-ridden. The telephone, the light bulb, the internet, all these innovations help urban populations live better, more productive, and happier lives. Where would we all be without the ability to DoorDash a maki roll after a long commute alongside our internal combustion engine? There is no reason AI cannot add to this list. As we will hear this week, AI is already offering tantalizing glimpses of how it could help develop more effective treatments for chronic diseases, optimize energy uses to reduce reliance on fossil fuels, and safeguard critical infrastructure from known and unknown threats. Why shouldn't AI be deployed to, say, help manage traffic flow, or optimize waste management by sensing when and where to collect our refuse, or improve urban planning by better analyzing demographic trends and climate data to optimize future development? All of this could make our cities safer, cleaner, and better places to live. And in the end, that's what matters. If our cities are going to continue to be centers of innovation and economic growth, we must reinvigorate the policy debate over how we make them more livable. The pull of remote working from an isolated mountaintop or a bucolic island may sound idyllic, but I still believe that we are better served when talented people come together to share their lived experiences in our global cities, just like you're doing this week in Chicago. Enjoy it. I wish I was there.
Artificial intelligence is reshaping our world. AI can provide localized climate predictions that save lives in a natural disaster. It can answer questions and surface helpful resources. But initiatives like predictive policing have shown that AI, without ethical and transparent implementation, can worsen existing inequalities. This is why it's imperative that leaders in government, the private sector, and academia come together to understand the promise and the potential pitfalls of AI. Collaboration, transparency, and trust are major components of successful AI implementation. So let's curate a toolkit of best practices for AI from leaders around the world who are already leveraging its power. The Pritzker Forum on Global Cities presents Harnessing AI, Tools for Urban Leaders.
Please welcome for tonight's keynote address, President and CEO of AnitaB.org, Brenda D. Wilkerson.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, can't see you. That's going to be good. I'm going to try to look at you. But I'm just so excited to be here, and I know you are as well. Isn't this an amazing event that we get to come together and talk about such an important topic? So with that, I want to share that I believe that we are at a crossroads of a new era. An era where technology promises to redefine the boundaries of what is possible. This forum, the Forum on Global Cities, represents a celebration of a whole lot of potential. But as we find ourselves in this place, marveling at what these technological advancements could unlock, it is critical for us to look beyond that and choose our paths forward with care. As CEO of AnitaB.org, a nonprofit that advocates for women and non-binary people in tech, it is my belief that every talk on technology, whether it existing or emerging, should and must begin with the discussion about the people these advancements will both impact and serve. After all, what is a city if not a collective concept of our citizens? To delve deeper into these subjects requires intense focus, and that's what I'm going to do today. I choose to concentrate on people, on the ethical and equitable development and deployment, necessary to make these emerging technologies possible. Let me say it again, people. That is what excites me the most. And honestly, it should be the same for you. Well, why is that? Similar to the impact of the steam engines and electricity in the 19th century, and internet and smartphones in the 20th, in the 21st century, AI and quantum have the ability to completely transform life as we know it. Yet, all that power unchecked, without proper guardrails in place, also has the potential to deepen existing divides and to create new forms of inequality. We all can agree with the words of Mayor Brenda Johnson. Our greatest potential is people. And therefore, this revolution must first be about people. That being said, I implore everyone sitting in this room that when we go back to our respective institutions, companies, organizations, that we not only focus on the capabilities and benefits of these emerging technologies, AI and quantum computing, but on the impact that these technologies and our decisions have on the very fabric and future of society. So I have a question, the first of many, and I'd like you to sit with it as we engage over the next few days. How can we strategically ensure that the tech we are discussing not only includes but serves people in a way that is both accessible and equitable? Let's begin by acknowledging that AI is a tool. It's not inherently good or evil. It's transformative. The real question is, transformative for whom? Who will reap the benefits? And who might bear the brunt of its challenges? These questions, they're not new, nor are they speculative. They echo through the annals of history that with the advent of every major technological shift, the equitable distribution of technology's benefits is not automatic. Rather, it's a choice, a series of decisions made by individuals, by business leaders, by governments, and by societies. It's a choice, a commitment, and a massive capital investment by Governor Pritzker and his administration to position Illinois and the United States at the forefront of the AI revolution. An investment totaling $200 million, which I might add, leads the nation for the creation of the Chicago Quantum Exchange through the Rebuild Illinois Capital Plan. See, I'm from Chicago, so I gotta brag on my state. Now, the White House is showing up as well. I was honored recently to get to work alongside 4 colleagues to help build the inaugural Board of Trustees of what is now called SEMI-US, the nonprofit organization that is the operator for the National Semiconductor Technology Center, or the NSTC. Work that will help our country build a strong semiconductor research and development ecosystem, leading to the hardware on which AI and other advanced software must run. Again, bragging on our state, we've been doing this work for decades, as many states have. We have an amazing quantum ecosystem in Illinois, and we have over 100 incubators and accelerators. So we've been doing this work, and many cities have. These are global visions, and our cities around the world can and should embrace them. Cities like ours can continue to play a role, but it will take more than a monetary injection. It will take a serious investment into the potential of every citizen, in the promise of a future where innovation serves the public good. So tonight, I want to leave you with 3 specific choices that we need to make so that AI and our investment in quantum can help us create a more equitable world. The first is around education. I'm the child of educators. I also took a stint in education. And yes, so I mean education in the traditional sense. Workforce development has to be hand in hand with the robust technological advances of AI and quantum, and the race to retake the lead in chip design. Our educational systems will need to rapidly evolve in order to train and retrain our workforce. People with traditional coding and AI skills can be upskilled in a relatively short time to code and improve quantum algorithms, but we have to be ready to help them with that. We must also be ready to introduce educational opportunities to our students in K-12. In Chicago, we know how to do that. In the same way that we worked to bring computer science education to every student in Chicago public schools with the CS for All movement, by introducing computer science as a core topic, we need similar policy creation across all of our states, across our nations, that allows us to not only introduce children to key technical education, but to give them the understanding of the opportunities we need them to step into. This will require investment in our educational institutions to ensure that they and our teachers are continuously equipped to be at the beginning of our innovation ecosystem, so that our students are ready to enter our stellar universities that graduate engineers by the thousands. But that's not the only education that is necessary. In addition to inspiring young people to enter the quantum workforce, we must demystify the jargon that fills this field. We must also be educators, informing the public about the risks of AI and also the opportunities. We must make AI and quantum and semiconductors commonplace conversation, banishing the fear that many feel right now around what these technologies might take from them, and work to ensure that more of them are prepared to encourage their children into these areas of growth. Like AI, quantum science has the potential to transform our urban environments by advancing technological capabilities, as well as providing opportunities for all residents of cities to participate in and lead the new economies developed by these technologies. We need public service announcements. We need conversations, and to use all the media at our disposal to bring our citizens along, giving them the choices to get skilled and helping them understand that they can. The fast-growing quantum economy has the potential to lift our communities through inclusive job creation, including a forecasted 22,000 quantum jobs just in the Chicagoland area alone. The next choice we have to make is around the quality of our data. The most used AI models tend to be black boxes. You put something in, you get something out, but you don't really have access to what happened in between. In sticky situations like, for instance, people going for mortgages, looking to get lending, it's a fact that when you let AI make those decisions about who gets the mortgage and how much they get, those decisions, they tend to be kind of sexist and racist. And that's because the data that they were trained on historically had racism and sexism built in. That's a problem. And if we are to make AI work for everyone, the ethical decision to make is to ensure that our data is as clean as possible, and not just in financial services, in healthcare, in the sentencing algorithms, in our legal justice system, and so much more. We must decide that as business leaders and as lawmakers, we have to demand that care is taken to ensure the quality of the data that our AI is trained on. That leads me to the third decision we have to make around explainability, which leads to correctable AI. When AI can explain itself clearly, then it opens the doors for us to give it correctable feedback. It should be the standard for all AI, in my opinion. There's this famous example where they trained an AI to distinguish between pictures of wolves and huskies, and the AI got really good at it. But because they were using an explainable model, they could ask the AI how it knew the difference. And you know what? It turned out that they weren't looking at the animal at all. It was monitoring for snow in the picture. Lots of snow, wolf. Not so much snow, husky. So if you give it a picture of a husky in the snow, what do you think it's going to tell us? It's a wolf. Models that are capable of explaining themselves will allow us to understand if they're taking into account factors we don't want them to. Explainability is what enables correctability. A good explainable model for mortgage or even resume screening decisions, for instance, can tell us that it took the name of the person into account when deciding whether to give that person a mortgage or an interview. And because we know that ethnicity is often coded into names and that certain ethnic names have traditionally not received mortgages or interviews in an equitable way, we can tell the model to ignore the names, and we can make it a better tool. Doesn't that make sense? That's the key. We want a better tool, not one that's going to become Skynet, not one that is a giant black box, not one that will break things and people because it moves too fast. We have to make the choice to set a strong context for how life can be improved when humans use AI as a tool. We need AI that can explain itself, and we need to use those explanations to engage in correction. We need to make the decision to set that as a standard. That's it. We need education. We need good data. We need governance. We need frameworks that ensure that AI respects the rights of citizens. And we need transparency and research. Take Danielle Lee, who is speaking with us tomorrow. She did some great work, and I can't wait to hear more about her research. As we move forward, we must remember that the equitable benefits of AI are not preordained. They are the result of deliberate actions, of policy choices, of ethical considerations. We, as global leaders in business, civic society, have a responsibility to make sound decisions that will have a positive impact on our society. Our task is to ensure that the fourth industrial revolution is not just an economic or technological one, though we want that, but a social one as well. A revolution that narrows the gap between rich and poor, between powerful and the powerless. A revolution that builds bridges and not walls. Let's engage in honest dialogue about the potentials and the challenges of AI. We have to dispel some myths and confront some realities. We must be transparent about the trade-offs and mindful of the impacts on our workforce. Human-centered technology and services require stakeholder input. Diversity and equity of perspective need to be in every room. I have hope. I'm confident that together we can shape an AI future that honors the dignity of every person, that upholds the values of our shared humanity, and that creates a legacy of inclusion and opportunity for generations to come. So I urge us over the next few days, let us not shy away from hard questions. Let us not be content with easy answers. Let us embrace the complexity of this moment, and let us work together to ensure the future we build with AI is a future that reflects our highest ideals and our deepest commitment to justice and equity. This is our challenge, and it's our opportunity. I'll end with this. Decisions we make about the ethics of our new technology, about our work, about our investments, will impact our future in this way. Our cities and our citizens will look like the sum of our decisions. Thank you for listening.
Please welcome your panelists for the promise and stakes of this moment and their moderator, Elaine Moore of the Financial Times.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the first panel of this event. I'm Elaine Moore. I'm the deputy editor of the Lex column for the Financial Times. I'm based in San Francisco. We are going to be examining the potential for a revolution in cities, one that harnesses AI and quantum computing. The capabilities of this tech is growing every day, and so public stakeholders need to start engaging with this right now. But first of all, we have to understand exactly what it is that we're talking about, which is where our panelists come in. We have a fantastic group this evening. David Graff is Vice President for Trust and Safety at Google. Stephanie Simmons is Founder and Chief Quantum Officer at Photonic. Noelle Russell is Global AI Solutions Lead for Accenture. And Nick Farina is Co-Founder and CEO at ArrowQ. David, I'm going to start with you. Very simple question. Just if you can give us a very snappy answer, what is artificial intelligence?
A simple question and a snappy answer. That's all I need to do. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Maybe it's easier perhaps to try to define 2 or 3 terms. Let's start with artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is essentially a broad term to refer to a broad field. It refers to a series of technologies and programming techniques that simply seek to imitate how human beings respond, how human beings interact with other human beings. So the checkers program or the chess program that you have on your phone, right, is a version of artificial intelligence. When you play it, it's imitating the way that a human opponent would play that particular game. You'll hear the term machine learning a lot now, and machine learning is a sort of a subset of artificial intelligence, and it's a particular type of programming technique in which algorithms are used to analyze large data sets, and those algorithms can begin to discern patterns and make connections and essentially learn the rules associated with the data sets they're analyzing. And that's different than your traditional programming techniques where you would need to actually program rules. So if you think of a tic-tac-toe program, traditionally you would program the rules and say, if you put an X here, you put an O here, et cetera. In a machine learning model, you would show this computer program hundreds and hundreds or thousands of games of tic-tac-toe, and it would begin to figure out, right, what the right strategy is and what it's actually seeing, the rules of the game. Finally, what you'll hear sometimes are a term like neural networks or deep learning. You can think of that as another subset of machine learning. And that refers to techniques that essentially attempt to, using the human brain as inspiration, create these dense layers of mathematical functions which are interlinked, which are extraordinarily effective at really understanding very, very large data sets. And so thus they're really good at image generation and other things like that because they're just capable of crunching so many different variables and understanding the variables. So if you think of AI, machine learning, and then sort of neural networks or deep learnings as aspects of machine learning, you can begin to, I think, have the right heuristic to understanding all of this exciting stuff.
Very neat. Thank you so much.
Was that snappy?
Yeah, that was very snappy. Noelle, if you can show us all your T-shirt. I think then the reason that we're all talking about AI this year is generative AI. And I wonder if you can give us a quick explanation of what that is and why that's got everyone so excited.
Yeah, it was actually great to the evolution that we just heard because generative AI, though maybe is recent, I always like to kind of get an idea. I can barely see you, but we can see you a little bit. But if you've used a tool like GPT or Midjourney, would you mind just raising your hand? Ooh, some prouder than what? That is amazing. So here's the cool thing, like you don't actually know what it is. So that's fun. So we're gonna do a little bit of that today. But it's a super exciting time. My journey into AI actually started 10 years ago. I was an early member of the Amazon Alexa team. And it was at a time where we were really just trying to get people to feel comfortable talking to tech. And it was the beginning of a journey that really culminated last summer when people realized, like, wait a second, I could just go to a web app and type stuff in and stuff comes out. And generative AI, really what it did was it took these models, machine learning models, supervised learning models, reinforcement learning models, deep neural networks, and it made them available through an interface everyone understands and knows, which is human language. And notice I didn't say English. Like these models understand up to 140 different languages. And so we'll talk about today, I think, the power of, resident experience. And as a resident, not of this wonderful city, but of a different one, I am very passionate that there's so much that we can do. But generative AI, it unlocks this capability, these what I call these machine learning models. It unlocks ideas people have had on how to solve experiential problems, resident experience problems, by just using your voice. And the trick to it, actually, like Brenda was saying, is that it's a little bit about the tech. The models had to be built by someone, the Googles of the world, the Amazons, the Microsofts. But once those models are created, the most important piece of a generative AI solution is the human, is the person using the model and the language they use to train it. And so we'll talk more about it today, but it's a really exciting time because the tech is awesome, but it's actually the people that make solutions possible and bring the reality of resident experiences to life.
Stephanie, we're also thinking about quantum computing, quantum technologies, and the impact they can have on cities. Can you explain to us what quantum technology is? I've read this a lot, and it's extremely difficult to try and put it into a few words.
Is it easier to just call it magic?
I mean, that will do.
So 200 years ago, audience halls like this were filled where people took a look at what a magnet was because they thought magnets were magic. And this is true for every single branch of physics that ever goes commercial. It starts off as magic, and then it becomes as boring as you plug something into the wall and you don't think about it. And that's progress. That's what technology progress is. If you go back and take a look at all of human history, it's all about the various branches of physics that have been commercialized one at a time, and there's not a single one where it hasn't changed just about everything, right? So semiconductor physics, I mean, AI is really the last, most recent version of what semiconductors have brought to the table, right? Understanding how to process information. You know, you can think of nuclear, you can think of optics, you can think of all of the, like every branch of physics has had this go, and quantum physics has the best predictive power of all of them, right? So buckle in. Now, information, you think of information as kind of in the air. Like, I guess people think the internet's kind of in the air or something, like these urethral. That's not what it is. It's actually little magnets flipping around in your phone, your supercomputer in your pocket. And those are being manipulated according to physical laws, right? Like flicking a light switch, that's a physical law. Classical physics describes it super, super well. If you go and you take a look at the limit of like what information can be encoded in physical stuff, according to physical laws, quantum physics just has everything beat, right? In terms of capacity within a quantum system. And that's why we can't simulate chemicals really well, because it actually is just outside the scope of what we can do. So the closest analogy I like to bring is like, okay, new physics. You can do new stuff, which means that you're gonna just do different things that you couldn't do any other way. And I think the way to think about it is kind of like in the sector of transportation. When they figured out how to fly, right? It's not like you stop driving cars. Like there's certain things that flying gives you. It gets you over the ocean, it gets you to the moon, but it doesn't mean you necessarily fly to the grocery store, right? So it's different physics, gives you different stuff, and we already have a laundry list of all kinds of stuff that we want to do as soon as these things are large scale and built, but they're not here yet. So it's good to be talking and getting in front of it now because it has a huge effect, but that's roughly how I would describe it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Nick, if we're going to knit the two together and we're going to think about Stephanie's magic and we're going to think about the excitement around generative AI, is there any world in which AI and quantum computing intersect?
I hate to be the bearer of bad news in the imminent future, but we don't currently have what's referred to as quantum AI. So there is this perception that a quantum computer, being a universal computer, will provide a speed up for any type of problem that a classical supercomputer can do today. And unfortunately, that's not true. Quantum computers are going to be used for generally quite specialized tasks. And there would involve quite a bit of work. It's not impossible, but people have been trying for quite some time now to figure out how to essentially come up with a translation layer between the information that you need from generative AI and inputting that into a quantum computer. The two of them are, I don't want to say, oil and vinegar, but they are They're not a natural combination. Whereas when you think about computational chemistry, there's a very clear link between the power of a quantum computer and how drug discovery is invented. There's a great piece in McKinsey, for example, called Pharma's Digital Prescription that goes into this. I will say, however, that, and this is what makes quantum computing so brilliant, but also so scary to some extent, is that if you ask the foremost experts in the world, they will tell you that we really don't know a lot. We don't know the applications yet. We don't know when we're going to get there in terms of what's called a fault-tolerant quantum computer, which really just means a quantum computer that works. One thing I will say is that there has always been this joke that quantum computing has been 5 years away for the last 35 years. And I've been in the field now for about 8 years. And what I can say is that the pace of what we've been discovering over in the amount of investment, the amount of brain power, has, I don't want to say it's exponential, but it's close to it. So I do believe we're in that 2 to 3 year strike zone. And I'll mention, to answer the question explicitly, there has been some work done now that essentially creates a translation layer called HHL, which will allow you, which could potentially allow a very large scale quantum computer to provide a speed up over GPUs, like your NVIDIA chips that folks use for machine learning, that a very large quantum computer could do so more effectively. So this was a preprint from the University of Chicago, Professor Jiang's group. So who knows? We don't know yet, but it doesn't exist now. It's not the most natural of fits. But we are surprised every single week in the quantum computing field. So nobody really knows.
Well, maybe let's bring it slightly back down to earth and think about cities and where this technology could be implemented. Noelle, can you give us some examples of how cities, Chicago maybe in particular, are thinking about implementing AI?
So I'm a big fan of this term I started using, which is a bit technical, but it's called bring back the backlog. And basically there's all sorts of things that organizations, mayor's offices, like people inside the city government have dreamed about doing for their residents, but has been very difficult to do for a bunch of reasons. Data wasn't good or clean or available, security was tough, compliance was hard, like all of these tough problems. And the future, like the world of generative AI, made it a little bit simpler because it allowed us to take advantage of a natural language model that didn't actually need your, as you mentioned earlier in the machine learning definition, right? You need lots of data to train a model. Where here's a good news, the GPT, the P part of the GPT stands for pre-trained. So it comes pre-trained with a bunch of data. So that's awesome. It means now that I actually can replicate citizen behavior, information, data, without actually knowing a whole lot about actual real citizens. I do, though, need good examples. And those good examples could come from one, a human that understands citizens, or the residents themselves. And what we found, so I've been working with cities all across the US in my current role, some much further along than others. But what also has been interesting is the businesses inside these cities are starting to really rethink what kinds of problems can you solve with this technology? And so it's extremely exciting because the kinds of problems you can solve are the kinds of problems that create a gap between the human, your residents, and the thing they're trying to do. Number one service in many of the cities I work with is just pet adoptions, pet licensing. I don't know if you've tried to adopt a pet, but it's hard. Unnecessarily so. I've rescued 3 cats, 5 technically, but 3 currently. Judge me if you will,
the technical
cat owners, but in that process though, I realized, and this is just representative though, that there is unnecessary friction for residents to just have a better experience doing things they need to do every day. And generative AI creates an opportunity for me not to build a fancy model, not to hire a bunch of data scientists. I mean, if you're a city who can hire a bunch of data scientists, you should totally do that. But most cities can't. And so this is a technology that leapfrogs that requirement and allows you to deliver real value to residents without a lot of the overhead we needed even a year ago.
David, I think that Google has been talking about this as well. Is that right? About the potential for especially big cities. I live in San Francisco where there's a lot of problems. I don't know, Chicago gets some heat as well,
Well, I lived in San Francisco for 5 years before moving back to New York. So look, I think what Noah said is exactly right. I think when you think about what these models are really, really good at, and the reason why this technology is so transformational is, one, to pick up what Noel said, the natural language abilities of these models, I think, allows for a much different and more user-friendly user interface. And anyone who's been on the phone with a government agency and it's press 1 for this, press 2 for this, and you get into that maddening loop where you just scream representative over and maybe I might be talking about my own experience. These models will, I think, in relatively soon allow us to have a natural language conversation that allows us to get the information that we need, that can be scaled, I won't say infinitely, but can scaled extraordinarily well. So cities particularly can really leverage these types of tools. But I think in addition, when you think about the problems that all cities face, right, they are so multivariate, right? There's so many inputs. If you just think about, we were talking about this earlier, something like trash collection. Well, when you think about it, and I'm from New York, and so we think about trash collection and rodent control, when you think of all the variables in that, right? You have population and population density and number of restaurants per block and what the weather patterns are and elevation of the city and proximity to parks, right? And if you're a human being and you start trying to sketch this out, your brain begins to fry because you can't take into account all these variables. But these models are exceptionally good at that. They're exceptionally good at sort of putting all of this data into a model and then querying the model and saying, and you can do fun things with prompts these days. You can just say, pretend you are a New York City commissioner in charge of rodent control. I've just given you all this data. What plan would you come up with, right, for addressing the rodent population? And it can give you some really interesting things, some really interesting insights. So I think that these tools they'll be very valuable for cities.
Stephanie, do you think are we anywhere near quantum computing being able to be put into practical use yet, or is it still theoretical?
Thanks for that. We are definitely in the brainiac phase, and that's true for a lot of these emerging tech. And I would say that actually it's in the early brainiac phase where the ecosystems are really nucleated, the right ones, because truly these technologies are physical, but it's the people and it's the people's ideas and leveraging them. I like using the example of semiconductors. So I shared how we have these supercomputers in our pocket, but do you know what the use case was that was identified for semiconductors before the transistor came out? Like why people cared? It certainly wasn't Google. They weren't thinking Google. They weren't thinking they were thinking hearing aids. That was the killer app of transistors because they had vacuum tubes, right? Vacuum tube computers cracked a whole bunch of codes, right? Like they had working computers before that, right? So I think it's really important when you think about cities is to recognize that cities are where ecosystems live and are formed, and they're not going to start out even. And I think, if anything, Chicago has taken a real global leadership position on the ecosystem play to quantum, not just having lots and lots of quantum professors, but doing the whole ecosystem work to really make the most of it when the sparks start to fly. I think that's where you're going to get the kind of combinatorial benefits about having all these kind of people that are brainstorming and working not just on the quantum problems, but on everybody else's problems. And well, how can this map? How can I make use of this? Because you always know that these things are going to go and change everything, but just exactly how that plays out is yet to be determined. So I think Chicago is a really good spot for that one.
And Nick, you mentioned the idea of some of the potential for this being quite scary. Is this something that can be mapped out in labs, the potential for things to go wrong? Is anybody doing that right now?
So the conversation of ethics and quantum computing is one that is a little bit long for this panel. So I will say two things. First of all, quantum is a dual-use technology, so it can be used for good, like medicine. It can be used for bad, like we know definitively that at a certain scale, again, the quantum computer that works, we would be able to break RSA 2048 encryption. Now, that requires a very, very big quantum computer, but what's happening is quantum computing is starting to happen a little bit faster than we expected back in the day. And people are coming up with more efficient algorithms to use on these quantum computers. And the good news is that we do have a variety of post-quantum security solutions. The question is, will we be able to roll all of these out in time? Those who work for large enterprises know that it can sometimes be a struggle to get things up in time. So everyone always talks about breaking encryption and, mining all the rest of the Bitcoin in the world as examples of what can go wrong. But what we have to think about carefully is all of the use cases that we don't know about yet, and be proactive about it. And I get a lot of pushback in the community. So since 2018 or so, my team has been very focused on the ethics of quantum computing and responsible use of quantum computing. And, to be frank, we've gotten a lot of pushback from friends in a respectful way that, hey, we don't know what the applications are yet. We're still so relatively far away from having a working quantum computer. And first of all, I'm not sure if that's true. And because if I'll leave you with this for cocktail party conversation, there's three things that are happening in quantum computing that are making it, I don't want to say speed up because that is a technical term, but that are speeding up progress. You have better chip design, essentially, better processors, better work and error correction, and more efficient algorithms, which are essentially the use cases of quantum computing that will allow us to do more with less. So all of these three things are rolling downhill in a snowball of sorts. And I think what we have is actually a remarkable opportunity in front of us to create a multidisciplinary dialogue around on the physicist end and on the engineering end to start to think about what these applications are, some that may potentially be negative. Some of them will be neutral. So for example, who gets access? Is it the researcher who has a cure for a disease but not a lot of money? Or is it simply whoever can afford the technology gets it, and it ends up being used by a bunch of hedge funds? So accessibility is a big part of that, in terms of, how do we make things go wrong? So I think part of the scariness is in the unknown. But I will conclude by saying that we have, in my view, folks who say, oh, it's too early. I say, no, that's great, because that gives us time to think and prepare and to take lessons from those who have come up with ethics and AI and earlier. And one final note is there was in 1975 in Asilomar, the conference venue in California, they had an event on recombinant DNA, and they brought in a multidisciplinary crowd of folks from lawyers, bioethicists, policymakers, and they came up with standards for recombinant DNA that have largely stood up to this day. So whether it's a quantum Asilomar or something like that, I think we have a really golden opportunity before the technology works. And again, I'm speaking to computing, not other quantum tech, but I think we have a great opportunity now before we know all those answers.
Well, hedge funds is one thing. I think people are also very worried about criminals taking their data as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder if we can go along the panel as our final question and think about some of the most promising work that you've seen, maybe thinking about data protection, maybe thinking about some of the more interesting applications of quantum and AI, particularly in cities. David, do you want to start us off?
Well, I've seen some pretty exciting applications of AI so far. I mean, particularly in the medical space. I know there's a team at Google that is very much focused on building and fine-tuning models focused on the medical community and medical issues. And just some of the things I've seen, for example, they have been experimenting with models that are really good at analyzing are really good tools for radiologists. They're really good at analyzing digital films and are able to do things like diagnose diabetic retinopathy with like a high degree of precision, just go through film upon film upon film and essentially just incredibly accurate with its diagnosis. And then when you think about what that means for medical care, right, and distributed medical care and access to medical care, I mean, being able to have these systems which are incredibly scalable, which can be deployed everywhere, which can be then used in rural hospitals or in urban hospitals or et cetera, where there might be a shortage of medical professionals, right, that can be, it can be life-changing and literally life-changing for folks. So I think some of the stuff that I think I'm not a doom scroller when it comes to AI. Maybe that's good given where I work, but these are the use cases I get really excited about, and when I see the practical application of this technology. This technology is not just something that's like for whiz kids and computer scientists in their basement, right? This is something that has real world implications and has almost immediate or very near term real world uses.
Nick, do you want to, having just given us the sort of scary answer, do you want to tell us where you've seen some of the more beneficial ideas about what uses could come from quantum computing?
Yes, I feel like I've spoken a little bit much here, but I will give two then. The first, I want to underscore medicine. Quantum computers will be able, and this is in the not so distant future, create entirely new types of medicines that we didn't have the computational horsepower pre-quantum computing to develop. They will also allow these medicines to get to market faster with better modeling. The second one, and this is a little bit controversial, is climate. Quantum computing is not going to fix climate change. So I want to be very clear that this is not a one fix for climate. However, there are efforts underway. I just got back from an event at GE Research where we spent 3 days studying all the ways, so one of them is there's something called the Haber-Bosch process, and that is finding catalysts for fertilizers, and that's something like 1% of global energy consumption, and quantum computers will be able to find better catalysts. And companies like Airbus and Boeing are using it for material design for aircraft. So they're, which will create, efficiency. People are looking at it for batteries. So there are many, many positive ways that this can impact the community.
Stephanie, what do you think? Where are you seeing some of the best ideas for quantum computing?
Well, you let him take it from me. Yeah. No, I do.
Even better than solving climate change.
Well, so catalyst is a real thing. And again, bringing it back to the physical world, all the the material processes that we have, the chemical processes that we are using catalysts for all of those chemical processes, and we don't really know how they work. Like, we don't have tools fit for purpose at all for any of them. They just seem to work, right? So chemistry as a field is a bunch of heuristics that will become purely computational. Like the entire branch of that science is going to be changed in the way, because then you can actually understand how all these orbitals work. Like, that's just, I don't know how you can overly, I got to emphasize that one because I think it's a big deal. And for thinking about climate change, that's one thing. You're going to have to redo how we think about energy top to bottom and capture the carbon that we have and all the rest of it. So I can't think of anything bigger than that. But it's not going to necessarily come in as fast as we want. We want it to go, really, really quickly. But I think there's an opportunity there, and to think about networks and to think about sensors. You can see stuff under the ground. There's a lot of stuff that we're really excited about that's being unlocked right now. So watch this space. You guys are set up really well for it.
And Noelle, if we can end with you, where are you most excited about the use of AI, particularly in cities, and how we might all live?
So I think it's so funny because I work, so this year in January at Accenture, I was given the opportunity to build a brand new practice around generative AI. And as with all good new ideas, people looked at me and went, well, that's not gonna work. People aren't gonna buy that, nobody's building that. And I was like, I don't know, maybe, let's just go do it. So we ended up doing 300 projects in 6 months, and many of them for cities. And the reason why was because we had a bunch of innovation funds and cities didn't have a lot of funding, and they liked talking to us. So we said yes. And some of the things that we learned, and it actually goes back to, I mean, we're in a museum. I actually learned this a few years ago. I was a data scientist, and I brought a bunch of MIT data scientists into the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And it was like a hackathon, but we couldn't call it that because the curators wouldn't come. So we called it like Serendipity Days, and they came. So it was awesome. But when they came, it was like awkward high school dance, and they wouldn't, like, they kind of looked at the technologists like, we don't need you. Thank you for coming. You can go now. And we literally had this moment where the data scientists, me included, went up to the curators and just said, what hurts you? What do you hate about your job? What frustrates you? What makes you irritated? What do you think you do that you definitely don't get paid enough to do or get paid too much to do? And they, as soon as you get people going, they won't stop. Like, they're like, and then this, and this. We ended up in 2 days building 19 projects that would remove friction. So when you say, like, what's the coolest, exciting thing? As a matter of fact, most of the work I do, 90% of the 300 projects was removing drudgery from human experience, triaging emails, taking away service tickets, completely eliminating PowerPoint creation. Don't cry. I know, it's, I'm telling you. So, like, it's funny because I always tell people, I'm like, well, I don't really do very fancy things, but the things I do make people cry and bring pure joy. But that's the cool part, is that this technology is elevating human experience. And guess what? People are happier, and happier employees make happier residents, create happier businesses. I mean, everything gets better when we remove this drudgery. And I think that's going to be a huge part of where this prosperity takes us in the next 2 to 3 years.
I think the idea of all of us being happier is a lovely place to end this. Thank you so much to my panelists this evening. A very difficult job to talk about huge tech ideas and how it can be put into practice. Thank you so much, Nick Farina, David Graff, Noel Russell, and Stephanie Simmons. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Please welcome to the stage co-director of the Institute for Urban Research at the University of Pennsylvania and the chair of the 2023 Pattis Family Foundation Global Cities Book Award Judging Committee, Eugenie Birch.
Good evening. Wasn't that just the best panel? It was really incredible. A wonderful way to start this forum, and we have another wonderful way to start this forum, which is with the Pattis Family Foundation Best Book in Global Cities Award, which we are going to give tonight. Last December, I received a surprising email from Ivo Daalder. It was surprising because we are not regular email correspondents, but even more so because of the enormous gift that he was offering, to be a member of the jury to select this Best Book Award. Of course, I immediately accepted and was soon joined by a wonderfully thoughtful and inspiring set of colleagues. Milagros San Jose Ballesteros, who is the regional director for the East and Southeast Asia and Oceania for C40. Richard Longworth, distinguished fellow at the Global Cities, Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Benita Shetty, founder of Smart Citizen, and Alfonso Vegara, founder and CEO of the Fundación Metrópoli in Madrid. Vanessa Barden and Rachel Abrams did a superb job of shepherding us along. They undertook the first winnowing of the more than 100 books that were submitted to the Council to give us a list of 35 monographs and asked us first to bring them down to 12, and then to select only 3. Well, we worked through the summer, the spring and the summer, and I understand the list of 12s was a summer reading list for the Global Council. And we were joined by Mark and Lisa Pattis, who witnessed but never interfered in our struggles to make the right choices. We were guided by basic criteria. First of all, the book had to be readable. Secondly, it had to address policy or policy-adjacent issues centered on interactions among local and global actors, forces, and trends, sharing neighborhoods, cities, and metropolitan areas. It needed to improve our collective knowledge of actors and communities and our institutions that significantly shape global cities. And it had to treat major urban issues, whether it was climate change, poverty, multilateralism, or AI. So now we are about to announce the 2 runners-up and the winner. Will Jorge Almazan, Joe McReynolds, Naoko Sato, who wrote Emergent Tokyo, Designing the Spontaneous City, published in 2022, please come forward. This book calls for the restoration of the expertise of architects in understanding the urban dynamics through the development of a typology of neighborhoods in Tokyo based on a deep analysis. The aim was to show that architectural expertise can dispel mythologies related to the megacities. And particularly the myth that they broke down was that large cities are too chaotic to understand and ultimately plan. The book revolves around descriptions of 6 types of neighborhoods found in chomes, thank you. My Japanese is terrible. Or mini towns of the 23 wards that constitute the administrative structure of Tokyo. Their key contributions are not only to Tokyo, but also about understanding what a complex and violent city can inspire the designs of global cities around the world. So congratulations. I don't know who to give it to. Thank you. Well, Rashmi Sadhana, author of The Moving City, Scenes from Delhi's Metro and the Social Life of Infrastructure, please come forward. Dr. Sadhana humanizes the massive $11.3 billion, 400-kilometer New Delhi Metro with descriptions, photographs, maps, and the words of the riders. She shows the impact of the metro on the city's real estate and its people. She shows the multiple effects of a megacity's investment in a major project to modernize the city and accommodate the growing middle class with special attention to women. She shows how it joins the city's famous monuments, it provides new kinds of public spaces, it unifies the cities, and contributes to the movement of formal workers to their employment, students to the university, and citizens to courts, and so forth. She is also conscious that lower-income residents, especially those who live in informal settlements, cannot afford to take advantage of this facility, and in so doing, points out the difficulties of modernizing in a rapidly urbanizing city of the global south. Congratulations. And now for the award winner. And I have to tell you, we did this selection totally independent of the planning that was going on for this forum. But as it turned out, John Lorink wrote Dream States, Smart Cities, Technologies, and the Pursuit of Urban Utopias, which is now the winner of this award. He tackles the topic of global concern, as we've already heard, and it's the introduction of technology into the contemporary city building. And he addresses key questions it stimulates, both in the global north and the global south. One of the jurors wrote the following: "It is a vital and clear-eyed look at smart cities, a guide for cities everywhere on how to judge and cope with a flood of new technology promising a new utopia. Basically, it's a primer on what tech can and cannot do to solve the problems inherent in density. It shows how technology has shaped the way we live now and in the past, and often in unexpected ways, and uses this history of the past to anticipate the future. Lawrence is a skeptic, but he's no Luddite. He clearly describes the new technology, recites a dispiriting list of utopias from Le Corbusier to Brasilia, and shows what works and what doesn't. Basically feels that small, smart projects often work while big ones don't. A Canadian, he pegs the tone to the failed Quayside project in Toronto. But it is a fine guidebook to all cities, a serious book, but very accessible to the general reader." Mr. Lawrence. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You have a few words to
Okay.
say. Then we'll give you the word.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming out, and I have to say I'm greatly appreciative of this award. So first of all, I want to thank the Global Council for hosting the award, and to Mark and Lisa Pattis, whom I just met, for sponsoring this award. It's great to have awards for books about cities, which is what I write about. So my great appreciation to all of the folks involved in those two organizations. I have to say I was gobsmacked to be chosen the winner of this. The other nominees are fantastic books, and I hope you all go out and buy them and read them. That's what I'm going to do. I'd like to just acknowledge a few people. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge my family, my wife Victoria Foote, who's here tonight, our sons Jacob and Sammy, my dog, who was helpful in this book, believe it or not. I also want to give a shout out to my publisher, Coach House Books, a tiny but mighty publisher in Toronto, and the editorial director there, Alana Wilcox, who supported this project. One of the things that I know about Chicago is that civic society is really important in the life of this city. And there are lots of foundations and philanthropists who are participating in all of these discussions. So part of the research for my book was made possible by a foundation in Toronto called the Atkinson Foundation. It was started by the guy who founded the Toronto Star. It dates back to progressivist politics, and it's still a force for progressive urban thought in Toronto, and they sponsored the first bit of my research. Very briefly, I'll say 1,000 years ago, I got a degree in math, which I really enjoyed but wasn't very good at. And then I got involved in student journalism, and then I went to J School, started off as a business reporter, and kind of stumbled into writing about cities, ended up writing about City Hall in Toronto. And I always say to young journalists to never bemoan the fact that if you're assigned to cover City Hall, because it's an endlessly interesting topic. And so I've ended up writing a lot about cities for the bulk of my career. And in about 2015, I started getting assignments for stories about smart cities and open data and predictive policing and all of these topics that you're going to be talking about over the next 3 days. And it's a kind of a cool marriage of these two disciplines, math, right, because I like numbers, and cities because I like cities, and the whole discussion is super interesting. And I discovered that a lot of people are really alive to this question about how technologies and these powerful digital technologies that we've just been hearing about impact the way cities work and the way we live in cities. And so I've had a great privilege of being able to write about this. And I think that what will happen over the next few days is one of the most important things that we could do about the advent of these powerful new technologies is to talk about them and really think about them and really figure out what's good about them and what's risky about them. And so more conversation about all of this and about the impact on these urban spaces that we all share is super important. So I thank you for attending this and participating in it, and thank you also for the award.
We must thank Lisa and Mark Pattis for doing this. And guess what? The competition is open for next year. Please go to the website and get the details and make those nominations. Meanwhile, let's congratulate these authors again